Elevations are typically long, right? Are typically long. So let's go ahead and make our paper size 17 by 11. That's not to say you can't do it 8.5 by 11 landscape, but let's do it 17 by 11. So File, New. And what I want you to notice is that we've done one exercise, a couple 8.5 by 11. We've done some 17 by 11. So if you have these here, that if you've used them recently, you can just go ahead and click on those. If not, you're going to need to go to the right side of the screen and call this, put your last name, underscore, GoLab, exercise 5. Put your own name there. I just put my name in there. Exercise 5, elevation. This is just getting us in the habit of good file management. You can also add the date there if you want. I'm not good at file management, so I'm training myself. You want to make sure that it is in inches. We're going to have a width of 17 and a height of 11. Resolution right now is at 72. I'm going to make it at 300 so it's nice and pretty for our portfolio. Check this out. Right now I have grayscale set. So if I didn't change this and I started rendering my elevation, it would all be in grayscale. So if you find that you're coloring your drawing and you can't get any color, this is probably the culprit. So go ahead and make that color. White background, 8-bit, create. So now I have my 17 by 11 canvas. Questions? All right, just checking out our settings, just real quickly, moving down to the middle of the instructions, just checking out our settings under Windows. So clearly my layers panel is showing. I don't really need libraries. I'm going to turn that off so that my screen is bigger for you. We want to always make sure swatches is checked because we're going to be adding color, options, and tools, as well as adjustments. Let's just make sure sample all layers is selected. So on the fourth tool icon down on the toolbar, click on your magic wand. And yes, still left over from earlier today, sample all layers is on, tolerance is around 33, so that's all good. Moving to page 2 of your instructions, we're going to bring in the image of the elevation. We're going to, those are located on your modules. I've saved them all in a folder on my desktop just so that I can quickly access this. You're going to not only want to put these on your desktop, you're going to want to save these somewhere. Because as we work together, you're making a great collection of materials and images that you can use as you move throughout the program and into the design profession. So I'm going to bring in a JPEG. Remember, you want to save your images as JPEGs or even better yet as PDFs. I happened to save these years ago as JPEGs, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that image in. So File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to go to where I found that, where I saved it. And so I saved it on my desktop, and I saved it as a folder, just so everything's together. INT 122, exercise 5 and 6. And I'm going to find that first elevation that we're working with. So you're looking for exercise 5, kitchen elevation. And again, it comes in. So when it first comes in, it comes in with the X, indicating that it just brought in, with the handles around the edge. click on a side handle, drag, and release your finger from your mouse to rescale. Click, drag, release. You can then bring that around your paper where you want, continue to scale, and it looks really blurry. Remember we talked about that? It looks really blurry, but once you hit Enter on your keyboard, you have that nice image. You're going to want to rasterize that image. So remember when you see that piece of paper with the corner saying that it has not been rasterized yet, you're going to want to do, I'm just going to show you what happens if you don't. So if I took my magic wand or my paintbrush and I wanted to apply color, we circle X, line going through says I can't. So watch it, and I'm going to right click on my mouse. I'm going to rasterize that layer. So it's indicated that it's rasterized. Go ahead and just duplicate that layer in case I mess up. I did the right clicking on my mouse. And then I'm just going to lock the bottom one. I'm going to lock the bottom icon. And that's way it's just there if I need it, but I can't color or do anything. Nice and clean until I unlock it. Any questions? So the first thing I'm going to have you do, I'm on page 2 of the instructions. I'm going to have you add color. So before we bring in Entourage, we're going to, on page 2, we're going to add basic color to the bottom base cabinets. But I want to pick out a color, Lauren. I want to, and for those of you who are watching the recording, I want to pick out a color from my backsplash. I want the cabinets to match in my backsplash. So I'm just going to show you a little trick what I do sometimes. I'm going to go ahead and say File, Place Embedded, and I'm just going to bring in that little picture of my backsplash. And I'm just going to put it to the side, and when I'm all done, I'm just going to turn it off. Hit Enter on my keyboard. So right, it's here in my drawing, but when I'm all done, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it off. So for those of you who are watching this video, bringing in an inspiration photo, bringing in a predominant tile or something, it helps you to quickly pick out the colors to render your elevation. So for those of you who watch these recordings, this is a really helpful time-saving tip. So here's my backsplash. So we're going to start by adding solid color. I would like you to add a new layer. And I did that by clicking on the square with the plus sign on the bottom. I ask you to name it so that we remember what it is. I'm going to call it solid color. And this is where I'm going to add my cabinet colors. So I want to make my cabinets either this orange color or this dark blue color. And so I can get an exact match here. So my instructions have a blue cabinet. Should I do, I don't know, orange cabinets? That might not look good. Should I stick with blue, Lauren? Dark blue?
Yes, I'm seeing that that's a new trend and I love it.
Okay, let's do the new trend. Okay, so let's click on the eyedropper and let's pick out the blue in my image. So do you see that the blue appeared? I can find that exact same orange and the orange appears. So again, time saving here. Blue. So if I want it to go away, if it bugs you, we can. So, but I've picked my color and there it is. So now I'm going to read the instructions and then show the demonstration. So we've added a new layer. We've called it cabinets or solid color. We're going to use the wand tool to select areas to receive the pixels or color. We're going to hold the shift key down on our keyboard as we select multiple areas using the wand tool. Then we're going to go ahead and use the paint bucket tool and just to drop in solid color. Magic wand, sample all layers is checked. So I got a couple messages from students who said, you know, I can't check. And that's typically because sample all layers isn't selected, so you have empty space and nothing for the wand to select. But by hitting sample all layers, it's sampling all the layers below it so it can read the black and white drawing. Use the wand tool to select these areas. I'm holding the shift key down on my keyboard. You want to make, this is the toe kick. So if you look at your kitchen cabinets, usually the cabinets are raised above the floor and there's that toe kick area there. So you can click that. And I asked for this exercise just to use the paint bucket. Ooh, that is a good color, blue. I'm glad that we took the time to pick out the blue from the backsplash. That's just beautiful. And then next, Control D on your keyboard to deselect. Very nice. Any questions? Next, we're going to add a new layer for the backsplash. And we need to bring this tile into our library so that we can either pattern stamp it in or use the define pattern and place it into the drawing. So I'm going to read the instructions at the bottom of page 2. So we've created a new layer and we've labeled it backsplash. We're going to go ahead and go File, Open, and you're going to open one of the tiles that I've provided for you. So I've provided, I think, like 4 or 5 different tiles that you can use for that decorative backsplash. And we're going to go ahead and select that seamless tile and define it and put it in our library. So let's do that together. So File, we're going to put this in our library first. File, Open. So we're going to open up that, and here it is. And we brought it into a new tab. And now we're going to define that pattern so that it's in our library. So just take a look at why this is a seamless pattern before I move forward. So just notice at the bottom of the page, we have half of this tile. And on the top is the second half. So when it's combined all together, then we have a full tile. The same will be true on the top as well as the side. So we have half of a tile and the other half on the other side. So when it's all tiles and pieces together, hopefully it's going to be really clean and precise. I encourage you in the module to register at SketchUp's textures website. It's free, and you can download these seamless textures. I see something that I didn't see yesterday, that there is a slight watermark, unfortunately, on this one. So if you don't want to use this one, I understand. I'm just seeing that with my bad eyes right now. So I must have not gotten this one from SketchUp. You're going to go Edit, Define Pattern. It's called Tile Eastern. That's what I named it. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm tabbing back to my drawing. And I'm going to turn this off so that people aren't getting confused. It's in my library now, along with the things that we've done over the last few weeks. So reading the instructions. So we've moved back to our elevation drawing. We're going to use the wand tool to select the area behind the tube, behind the hood. You can use the pattern stamp or the paint stamp to apply the color to paint it on, or we can define the pattern and put it in. I'm going to go ahead and it's easier to do it this way, using the these adjustments and patterns. So click on this here. I'm noticing that it's selecting all around the water supply. It's going around the hood, and that's the exact area that I want to put the pattern. I'm going to have a quick drink, Lauren. Click on Pattern. My area is highlighted. You can see that the default trees or bushes come in. I'm going to scroll down to the pattern fill, and look at this is from last week. Remember, we played around with woods and some of those tiles, and here's the one that I just brought in. And before you hit OK, play around with the scale. I mean, I kind of like that scale. So I only have one person on right now, Lauren, but I'm going to make it bigger and smaller, and let's see, so bigger, medium. And then once you get it to the size that you want it and where you want it, I did that by just clicking and moving it around, holding down on my mouse. Then you hit OK. That looks really good. So that was adding in the backsplash behind the hood at the end of page 2. Ooh. Next, we're going to add a picture in the window and the door. So last week I had you make a cutout. There's a couple ways to do this, but last week I had you make a cutout and put the image behind the cutout. So let's see what I'm having you do today. You have already practiced this way. So we have duplicated our elevation, and we are going to go ahead and select the area inside the window and then hit delete on your keyboard. We're then going to bring in an image, and we're going to place it behind the window. We're then going to place a second image behind the door. And we're going to make sure that those images are located below the cutout. And we'll have this great effect. So let's first bring this. So I must have been Italy or Sicily a few years back assignment. That's, I mean, we usually offer this class in the summer, so that kind of makes sense to me. I'm going to select this area, and I could select right here on a new layer, but I want to go back to my kitchen elevation copy layer because I'm going to cut out a hole. So I'm clicking on that area, the window, and I'm hitting delete. So I'm removing the pixels. Then I'm going to go to the door and I'm going to hit delete. And as you remember from last class period, Control D to deselect, it looks the same. But if I turn off the layers below the cutout, you can see that I've made a hole or an opening. So next I'm going to go File, Place Embedded. You can find your own image. I brought this one in. It reminds me of Sicily. And I'm bringing it in over here. And I'm having a hard time seeing what I want. So I'm going to click on the image that I just brought in. I'm going to drag it below the cutout and hit release. Now it's in my window. I'm going to rasterize that image. And from that layer, let me ask you, sometimes if we put in this beautiful picture of Sicily, sometimes our eye just goes right off the page. And sometimes that's important if the view is what you want to enhance. But most of the time we're trying to sell a new kitchen design. So what I'm going to do is from that layer on opacity, I'm just going to kind of turn that down a bit so that it goes away a little more. So now you can see it's softer. And so you're just having that suggestion of what's out the window. Let's repeat that again. And if you're following along, go ahead and bring the view into this area. File, Place Embedded, that same view again. I'm going to drag it underneath. Well, now I can't see it. And I'm going to bring it over here. So a couple things I want to bring to your attention. If you see the horizon line here in this image, where the sky meets the sea, it's going to have to be the same horizon line. So that line should be carried across over here. So for example, if I were to do this, then we would want to make sure that those horizon lines meet, right? We don't want to play with Mother Nature, but I kind of like just seeing that foreground. I'm going to play with the opacity, go back to that layer, rasterize it so that I can bring it down. So just a little peek out the window. So the next thing I want to bring to your attention is a pet peeve of mine. A pet peeve of mine is when designers leave the landscape of the ocean and it literally looks like, hey, if I walk out to the sea, right? If I walk out, that I'm just going to drop off into the ocean or drop off, into the Grand Canyon or something. So I try to make a little bit of a foreground here, something that might look like a landing or a patio. And so I'm going to use the marquee tool and just to create, do a new layer first. Control D to deselect. Let me do a new layer first. And this, I'm just going to call this landing. Are you with me, Lauren? Why I don't like just to have a door open onto the sea, that I need a little something something out there?
Yes, that makes complete sense.
And so I can pick color brown even, and I can just, I mean, it doesn't have to be much, but it's just something, so that control, just so that it, when I put a little entourage in front of there, it doesn't look like I'm going to just drop out and fall off the earth. So that's why this looks so nice. It really looks like it gives it some foreground. So if you wanted to put a little plant or something there, that does really help. I'm going to go ahead and move to page 4, and it's called Entourage. So I haven't done this yet, but it looks like I went ahead and colored in the top cabinets too. So I'm going to go back to my solid color, and I'm just going to finish that off. So I could select that blue again, just from the cabinets. I'm on the solid color layer, my cabinet layer, and I'm just going to go ahead and color those in quickly. Lauren, have you found a way, there's a way, I don't know how I do it sometime, where you can actually just do them all, like paint all that's selected? I imagine I just have to Google search that, because sometimes I do it and I don't remember how I do it, but there's a way that when it's all selected, you could just hit with the paint once. So I'll probably work on that. So this is up to you. If you want to have just blue cabinets at the bottom and white cabinets at the top, that's up to you as well. You know, there is freedom in this class, but this just makes it a little easier when I have things ready for you. So moving to page 4 and Entourage, we're going to go ahead and place a wood block on the counter. So I'm going to put a little wood block on this counter. So I'm at the top of my layers panel, and I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and there's something called Wood Block. It wasn't at the top of my layers panel. Now it is. So I don't know if you noticed that when I first brought it in, it was behind Backsplash, and which is fine, but I just went ahead and moved it at the top of the panel. And it's pretty darn big. Rasterize layer. So from that wood block, remember, if you ever click out of it too soon and you want to rework that, you can always, from that layer, go Edit, Transform, Scale. So we have learned a lot in 3 weeks. So you've done most of these commands. And then you're going to want to make it sit right on this line of the counter. So that might require zooming in. And then Edit, Transform to move again. And just bring that down right there on the line. So because I'm having trouble hitting right there, do you see that, Lauren, that it's slightly covering up the black line of the top of the countertop?
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit enter. And I'm on the layer of the wood block. I'm on nothing else is with it. It's just the wood block. I've rasterized the layer. And so now I'm going to hit the eraser tool at 100%. And I'm just going to go ahead and erase the bottom. I'm going to erase in a straight line by holding down the shift key on my keyboard while I drag. And do you see that I'm bringing back, I'm cutting off the bottom so I have that nice sharp line at the bottom. So it looks like that wood is just sitting right there on the countertop. What else am I bringing in? I'm bringing in clementines, file, place embedded, somewhere there's clementines, a bowl of clementines. It's going to be sitting right there in front. And I'll hit enter on my keyboard. I think it would look nice if the board was a little behind the clementines. So I'm going to go back to the wood block layer, and I can also just hit the move tool and move it back there. Questions? All right, so on page 4, we're going to bring in an image of a woman. And when you add scale to the drawing by placing in like a human form, it really helps to see kind of all of the relationships, right? The scale, the proportions. So I'm going to go ahead and place a woman right here. So I give you a couple options for those of you who want to explore, different ways to highlight Entourage. So sometimes designers like to bring it in as an actual, just a photograph. Some like to make it look just like a silhouette or a shadow. So I'm going to read the instructions. To create, page 4, to create an image of the girl, you can download images from Mr. Cut. So next class period, we'll be working a lot with Mr. Cut. Mr. Cut is a website. Hello. Mr. Cut is a website, and you can register for free, and you get to download, I don't know, a couple images a day. So like over the course of a summer, every day I go in and I download a couple of images. And so by the end of the summer, I had a great library. So this is where I got our picture of our little gal. So I have included that cutout. So we're going to open her up. We're going to open up the image and go File, Open, and just down here, here she is as an image. For today. Go ahead and duplicate the layer. And I'm going to turn off the eye of the bottom layer so that when we erase the background, just like what we did in the mood boards, we could see what we're doing. So we're going to use the magic wand to highlight the background. And you probably want to hold the shift key down on your keyboard and get the area up between her legs. And then we're going to delete the background by pressing delete on your keyboard. So she cleaned up very well. I missed this area. And if she didn't, if for some reason, just like when we did the mood boards, like maybe right here a little bit too much of her got cut out, well, then you're going to want to use your eraser tool and some of the other points that I brought out when we did the mood board. So we have her with her cutout background now. We want to save her as a PSD so that there is no background. So we've done this before. Save as PSD. I want to save it right here as a Photoshop drawing, right? PSD. Save. So that when I go back to my elevation, I'm going to place her. So it's helpful to know like what standard heights are. So if a standard door is, 6'8", and we're bringing in a 5-foot gal, it just kind of helps with placement when you don't have actual scale. So I'm going to ask you all today as part of your exercise is go ahead and stand next to a countertop and stand next to a door and feel where your hand is when you open the door. Feel where you are at 36 inches when you're in front of a cabinet. And I'm asking you this because you're placing in this Photoshop drawing now of our girl. You have to scale her. So she's going to be located on this line. It's an elevation. She's going to be located on this line. We're not doing perspective yet. If it was perspective, she can be way up here. We have to place her somewhere on the line. So for me, I'm 5'2". It's right at my hips that I hit the counter. And that's where I would be right by the door as well. So this is an exercise for you, and you're going to place her in. I'm going to rasterize the layer. And then I don't like how her toe, I like how she's kind of stepping around. It gives that sense of motion. But truly in an elevation, we need to keep that nice strong line at the bottom. So grabbing the eraser tool, it's at 100%. So hear me, to create a straight line, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard as you drag across. Hold down on the Shift key as you drag across. If there's a shadow that you don't like, you can zoom in. I'm not going to zoom in for the sake of time, but you could zoom in and clean that up. If she seems a little too tall, I don't think so. She looks like a perfect model that would be in this kitchen. But if she's a little too small, a little too tall, you can always, transform that again and bring her down a bit. Any questions? I've also included silhouette drawings. And if you want to bring those in, and I also will show you how to do those. I think maybe I'll do that in another lecture, but the instructions, if you wanted to make her just a silhouette or like a shadow, I have the instructions on moving from page 4 to page 5, how to do that. So I have like 3 students on, a couple students on. Does anyone want to see how that's done, or would you like me to continue with the elevation exercise? I'll do whatever. It just depends on how long you want to be on today. There's instruction there how to do it. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to use that same drawing of the woman that I did. You're going to open that up, and then you're going to fill in her area. You're going to select her, and then you're going to fill in her area with either gray or black, and then play around with the transparency. Pretty easy, but very effective if you don't actually want to show a person, more of a physical person. see. Shadow, highlight, finishing those things up. Everything else you've done before. Let's add some tile here to this area. First I have to I'm going to bring a tile in. So go to File, Open. Let's get my tile in my library. So I have subway, basic subway tile here. What did I do? File, Open. What did I do? I hit the subway tile. Yes. The embedded cannot be used because it is invalid. Let me see if it's because I have this highlighted. File, Open, or maybe I just have a corrupt subway tile. So I have a corrupt subway tile. Oh, there it is. So here it is. I'm going to put it in my library. White tile, nice and named for you already. Okay. Tab back to the elevation, and if you want to put tile here or here for this matter, if you don't like what this is looking from AutoCAD, we'll play around with that. I'm selecting that area, looks good. I'm at the bottom of the screen. I call it my little Oreo cookie, that adjustment fill or adjustment layer. I'm hitting pattern. It always defaults to this funky little tree for me. And now I'm going to select the tile. Ooh, that looks so much better. Does anyone want the scale differently? You can change the angle, you can make it bigger or smaller. It's looking pretty good, so I'll just hit OK. I want that same tile to be here and here and here. Do this one first. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn off for a sec these two things. My clementines and my wood block. I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to select this area using the rectangular marquee tool. And then I'm going to bring in the tile. Move it around if you want to. I'll do the same here. And I'm going to turn my clementines back on and my wood, and they're probably going to be hidden behind this tile because I have the layer above it. So look on the right and see that this layer is going to be above the wood and the clementine. Okay, you do this better. This is as good as I'm going to do for today. My pattern fill, bring that in, hit OK. I want to adjust it just like the one on the other side. Doesn't that look really good? I'm going to turn back on my clementine and my wood. And you don't see it. But no big deal. Drag my bowl of clementines above Backsplash. Come on. Drag the wood up. And now they're back. I think they need to be moved down a bit. My wood block. So you do that. Yours will look better than mine since I'm reading instruction and edit, transform, and working. You get the picture. Get them sitting on that nice countertop. So taking a look right now, I feel that the bowl of clementines is just like coming forward too much. It's like too in your face. So I'm on my clementine layer, and I'm just going to take down the opacity a little bit. You could just, I mean, I know you can see through it a little bit, but it just makes it so it's not so in your face. You can also, when you bring it in, you can play with the adjustments and just play with the image adjustments as well if you want to take down the brightness. Right, so in your instructions, when I look at the bottom of page 5, it looks like I went ahead and just added color to all of the appliances, a little framing around the door and window, a little color up here on top if you like that. And so I just think I'll have you finish that off, but I will do the hood and maybe the appliance with you. So for the example that I have posted, I used black and white appliances. I don't know if black's going to be too strong, but I think it's going to be pretty cool rather than stainless steel. I went ahead and used black and white down here of the color selects. And I used the gradient tool to create that look. And then I can go through and add highlights. So I'm just going to do a little bit for you, and then you can finish. I'm holding the shift key down. Looks like I left this white for a little bit of definition. And right click on the paint bucket to get the gradient tool. So that is however you, however dark you want to get it. And then while this is highlighted, let's just say you want it to go a little darker. Go to your brush tool. That's 77% opacity. That's just what it was. It's black. If you want some sharp lines, like light is catching it. This is just trial and error. When there was just the two of us on earlier, I was talking about, I just read videos and tutorials and I try to figure out how people do things. I know how to draw, so this is how I've learned how to illustrate in Photoshop. I'm going to hold the shift key down so that I can have a nice straight line as I drag. And I'll repeat it. And so now I'm starting to get some nice definition. So that's how I did the appliances in the demonstration. I started just with the nice gradient tool just as a start, and then I would go over it with white or black or whatever color that you want to create this effect. That was an angle. I don't even know if I mind an angle because it kind of makes it look like light's reflecting. Questions? All right, the next thing I want to show you is make sure that you get some darkness underneath here. You can paint it blue, the wall color. This is up to a designer. Most designers won't take this expensive decorative tile all the way down to the floor when this range is covering it up. So most designers will just paint it a wall color or make it go away. So make sure you get that nice and dark under there as well. Let's see, what are other good tips for you as designers? Okay, so elevation. Let's add some shadows. So we added some shadows in the floor plan. So if my light source is coming from this direction, because that's the direction I always have it coming in, I'm going to put a little shadow underneath the upper cabinets. So I can zoom in and be very careful and paint in some of those. But what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and the second tool on the top of the toolbar is your marquee tools. There's single rows, there's single vertical rows. I'm just going to grab the marquee tool. I'm going to create a new layer in case I totally mess up called shadows. And I will click, drag, and release to highlight the area underneath the upper cabinets. So I will grab a soft brush. You can see it's nice and soft and fuzzy. The opacity is 62. Maybe I'll take it down to 50 or so. And I'm going to use the shift key and I'm going to drag my brush across. I'm not going to fill in the entire marquee area. So I just want to stop and pause because I did grade several of the floor plans from last week. Typically, you don't have a harsh edge. So when you guys were doing some of the marquee, using the marquee tool to bring in some sunshine from the windows, it was just a little too severe. So this just keeps you from overspraying. So I'm going to hold the shift key down. I can even start over here. I'm holding the shift key down, and I'm only bringing a little shadow up there. Control D to deselect. So I think it looks better not to have that really harsh edge. I guess I'll leave that up to you as illustrators and designers. So I'm going to use the same brush, the same color. I hit it twice. What did I do? I moved it. Move the backsplash. I hit the back. So do you see that the backsplash is hit? That means I hit the backsplash and I accidentally moved it. So I'm undoing my move. So I'm on my backsplash. So if I try that again, I'm going to just move it again. I need to make sure I go back up to my right layer and hit shadows. So that's a natural thing that happens, right? I was getting too quick and I clicked on the backsplash and I moved it. We don't want that. So I'll be nice and neat. Control D to deselect. So if you want to, if the light's coming from the left down to the right, you'd have some shadows going around the hood, some shadows going around here. If you wanted to drop some shadows from the objects that you brought in. I'm just going to do a couple things, and you can also ask me what you think, and I could demonstrate anything that you want. It's your time. So another thing that I do is first I would color all of this in up here and get all finished. Sometimes it's nice that actually the wall and the ceiling casts a shadow. So that looks good sometimes. So I'm going to use that same step. I'm going to use the marquee tool, and your eyes are better. I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to hold the shift key down while I select the ceiling area. Hi, Abigail. And then I'm going to do that same detail. So if my light source is here, I'm just going to draw. I only want to do it once. Hold the shift key down on your keyboard while you drag. That way you have a nice straight line. Hold the shift key down while you drag up. And now all of a sudden, I have some definition there. So Might do the same thing here as well. Control D on your keyboard to deselect. So the side of the cabinets might have something, the side of the hood might have something. Let's just go back to our clementines and our wood block. And remember, under FX is your drop shadow. So these are, am I missing a drop? There it is, my drop shadow. And I think I like 130 to 160 typically. So I don't like that. I don't mind that. I feel like the distance is too strong for a little wood block. So some of you, if you're watching this recording, last week, some of you missed that. It's just a real easy way without having to zoom in and carefully go around the edge of an object. When you bring these PSD drawings in, you can actually make those have a cast shadow. So that was really, really helpful. Any questions or anything that you would like for me to see you do? Here. This is the in-class assignment. So should we be in person, this is what you would be working on in class. I'm happy to stop the recording and just be here as you might want to start working on this for the next hour. So I'm happy to do that. And then you have a homework. You have a second kitchen elevation that's really, really easy, but it doesn't have the same level of notes. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to stop the recording here for those of you who are listening to recordings online. And I'm going to be here for any student who wants to stay and work and ask any questions.